Silver Crown Royalties is the only silver-only royalty company because we only focus on the silver component of an ore body.
Talking silver here with Silver Crown Royalties and Peter. First question, physical silver versus owning a stock. What are the pros and cons?
Well, the biggest pro of owning physical is that, well, if you have it in your own hands, in your own backyard, nobody can take that away from you. And that value of that commodity will always be reflected. I mean, there's a market for it. There's always a buyer for silver. There's always a buyer for gold. On the equity side, and this is the part where, you have Warren Buffett reeling against gold and silver, which is a bit hypocritical because the man did purchase, I believe it was 100 or 150 million ounces of silver at one point in the 80s when the Hunt brothers squeezed the silver market. He made quite a bit of money, but he's been riling against gold anyway for the one simple reason, in his defense, is that it doesn't pay a dividend. And even though that is true, again, because you do have that protection against devaluation of currency, which is the natural occurring state of all currencies, silver protects you from that. So in a way, it does pay a dividend. But that's an argument for another day. A stock may or may not pay a dividend. And that's the attraction of owning silver equity type investments, that you can get that dividend. And also, you can have reinvestment of free cash flow, which obviously silver in the ground or silver in your hand will not generate. Whereas if you have a silver business, you do get free cash flow. You can expand a mine, you can find a new deposit, you can grow the business, pay more dividends. So silver, naturally, the metal, of course, doesn't have that. So those are the pros and cons.
So if I already made that decision to purchase a security in the silver space, how does a silver pure play compare to a copper silver play compared to a silver royalty play?
That's a very interesting question because there are no pure play commodity equities out there. Even the silver ETF that claims to be silver only is hardly that. Silver Crown Royalties is the only silver-only royalty company because we only focus on the silver component of an ore body. Now, ore bodies, as we all know, are polymetallic. They will always have more than a single element in them as long as they're non-ferrous. The only question is how much of that silver is there and is the producer being paid on it? So the silver in the ground is going to be there at a gold mine, at a lead mine, at a zinc mine, at a copper mine. And if you have Freeport-McMoRan, for instance, well, that's a copper, molybdenum, gold, silver producer. In fact, it's one of the biggest in all of those categories globally. You can't wake up one morning and say, I really like silver, so I'm going to buy Freeport-McMoRan. You can't really say, I really love gold, and I'm going to go buy XYZ gold company, because they have all these other, let's say, dilutive elements in them, simply because that's how the production process works.
Quick follow-up question on that one. Of course, diversification is also a thing that investors are looking for. So would you say this single-minded focus on silver for the Silver Crown Royalty business is actually a competitive advantage, or is diversification more important?
So in terms of diversification, I've always come from the school of thought that that's something for the investor to determine. So if I want to only buy a copper equity, I should have the opportunity to just buy copper. I don't want exposure to molybdenum or gold or anything else. And by that token, I should have the ability to buy each element. I should be able to buy oxygen if I want, things of that nature. So that's why we created Silver Crown Royalties. And in fact, this was something that we originally were looking into at Star Royalties, is to have, once the mass got big enough of the company, we would split out individual elements into each individual elemental royalties, and Star Royalties would be the only royalty ETF. That didn't happen. The focus was much more on green royalties and carbon credits. So that's why we split away and started Silver Crown Royalties to be the only pure silver royalty company. Now, in history, there have only been two in the past. One of them was Silver Wheaton, which is now called Wheaton River Minerals, simply because they've purchased too many gold royalties and now have 60-70% of the revenues from gold. Franco-Nevada always had a mandate to have 20% of their royalties from oil and gas. Our mandate is to be 100% silver. And if an investor wants essentially a silver ETF because of a very broad diversified base that we have across silver offerings and our intent to pay dividends, we think that that would be ideally suited for an investor that likes silver commodity, wants that dividend, and once that diversification, they don't want to worry about it. So, and just pure silver exposure.
And Peter, I just checked and asked ChatGPT how many stocks are being traded right now worldwide? And the answer is 65,206. Now, you just mentioned that the setup that you've chosen hasn't been available beforehand. How can that be with 65,206 stocks currently being traded in the world? You would think that every area is already covered.
Well, it's for the reason that royalties themselves, the way that they have historically been created, is generally by prospectors or prospect generators, and they go and they stake a plot of land and then they put a royalty on it. They don't discriminate against what's on that property. So they cover 2%, 3%, whatever the NSR is, on all the metals. And nobody has really picked out the eyes of, okay, let's just have a gold royalty, or let's just have some other metal that's predominant in the project, because, well, the prospector didn't even know what was going to be there. And then once you had enough of these royalties put together, you put them in a basket, Franco would buy them, or a company would have them inside and spin them out, like what you had with Mavericks. So in terms of originating royalties or starting royalties, nobody actually decided to have a single element royalty until we came along. On the streaming side, different story, of course. That was when Silver Wheaton started, that was pure silver, no question about it. It was a silver debt instrument. But the issue there was that silver itself is such a small component of mining revenues, not on an individual basis just, but globally. It's such a small, minute byproduct that if you really want to grow a business, dabbling in pure silver streams or pure silver royalties is a really, really tough thing. You can do much bigger business in gold, or in copper for that matter, or in oil. Silver is a space that nobody looks in, right? So nobody really wanted to split these things out, because why would they? It made more sense just to have everything together, make all that money. And nobody wanted to say, oh, we just want to be pure silver. That was never Silver Wheaton's mandate. Silver Wheaton's mandate was to originate streams, help fund projects into production, have those streams structured as a debt-like instrument for various tax advantages. And they were not restricted to silver. And neither is Franco, and neither is anybody else. We are.